Russia is striking critical substations linked to Ukrainian nuclear power plants in an attempt to shut them down. The strikes threaten disaster, the New York Times reports, citing experts. Russia has been targeting Ukraine's energy sector since the early days of the war, trying to destroy it and make life miserable for Ukrainians. So far, these attacks have focused primarily on thermal and hydroelectric power plants and their transmission facilities. But Ukraine's energy system has not collapsed, mainly because most of its electricity production relies on nuclear power plants, which have so far escaped direct attack. According to the IAEA, since August, Russia has been trying to target power distribution substations associated with nuclear power plants to deprive Ukraine of its last major power generation capacity. According to Sean Burney, a nuclear expert with Greenpeace Ukraine, substations at nuclear power plants not only transmit energy produced by nuclear reactors to the grid, but also feed back electricity to the plants to cool the reactors and spent fuel. A loss of cooling function in one or more reactors would inevitably lead to a nuclear meltdown and a large-scale radiation release. Greenpeace warned in a note sent to the New York Times. United Nations experts issued a similar warning in a statement released Monday. They said that further damage to Ukraine's power grid could lead to power outages, increasing the risk that operating nuclear reactors would lose access to the grid to power their safety systems. Such an event, the statement said, could lead to a serious nuclear disaster. Kyiv has tried to persuade the IAEA to send permanent staff to these substations, hoping that their presence will deter Russia from attacking. After all, Russia needs to maintain good relations with the organization to be able to continue exporting its nuclear energy technology. But the IAEA said it could not risk the safety of its staff, so it conducted only one monitoring mission and did not announce any additional visits. Ukrainian government promised that the power would not be cut off to businesses that produce 60% of their consumption volume. According to Prime Minister Shmyhal, Ukraine is currently continuing to export electricity from Europe. We also reported that next week, the situation with power outages in Ukraine will improve and the duration of outages will be reduced to 4 to 8 hours per day. The coordinator of the Ukrainian partisan movement Atesh in Crimea began to regularly receive messages from soldiers of the occupation forces serving in air defense units, complaining about difficult conditions and the desire to return to Russia from where they were transferred to the peninsula. As written in the Telegram channel of the resistance movement, for this purpose, one of the military men of the Russian army even reported the locations of 4 modern S-400 systems and missile depots near Yevpatoria. The partisans have already passed their coordinates to the armed forces of Ukraine. Yevpatoria is a city in Crimea that was seized in 2014. Since then, the Russian army has organized locations for military equipment and personnel going to the front in Ukraine, especially after the large-scale invasion. Earlier, reports indicated that Russian soldiers had set up fire positions directly on the beaches of Yevpatoria in the temporarily occupied Crimea. In September 2023, the security service, military, counterintelligence and the Ukrainian Navy carried out a unique special operation near Yevpatoria. As a result, Ukrainian forces destroyed a Russian Triumph air defense system worth $1.2 billion. Ukrainian partisans reported that Russia is expecting a Ukrainian airborne landing in Yevpatoria. An agent of the Atesh partisan movement from the Yevpatoria National Guard of Russia said that the Russians are anticipating a Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group landing in the area. In response, they are actively strengthening defense structures throughout the city and its surroundings, said the partisans in a post. It is also reported that about half of the families of Rosgvardia officers have left the peninsula due to concerns over potential combat in Yevpatoria. The partisan movement is calling on local residents to share information with Atesh. Last week, during reconnaissance of the Yevpatoria area, an Atesh agent discovered that Russian troops had moved military equipment and air defense systems to the Kerch area to provide additional coverage for the Crimean Bridge. This left the aircraft repair plant and the adjacent airfield practically unprotected and without equipment. Only aircraft fuselages and an old Zu-232 Anti-aircraft gun, likely intended for drone defense, remained on the plant's territory. Since the beginning of Russian aggression in eastern Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea, the Ukrainian army and special forces have consistently prepared for potential operations on the peninsula. The shortage of armored vehicles and the constant threat of drones have led to significant delays in evacuating wounded Russian soldiers, causing significant logistic problems and resulting in a lack of medical personnel. This is according to a report from the UK Ministry of Defence. Recently, Russian media outlet Astra reported that dozens of wounded Russian soldiers staged a protest in Novosibirsk after inadequate medical treatment. Soldiers from the 41st Combined Arms Army of the Central Military District reportedly complained about mistreatment by their unit commander and refused to return to the front line without proper care. They are said to have smashed windows and damaged the barracks, with 10 fleeing the compound. British intelligence mentions that the lack of armoured vehicles, coupled with the ongoing threat from drones, has caused delays in evacuating wounded troops. This almost certainly increases the risk of more severe injuries and higher mortality rates among those who are eventually evacuated through the medical system. It is almost certain that this scale of casualties continues to strain the Russian military medical system at all levels of medical care, causing significant logistical problems and resulting in a shortage of medical personnel. These problems will likely persist for at least the next 3 months, the UK Ministry of Defence predicts. The British Ministry of Defence also cites data from the Ukrainian General Staff, which states that since February 2022, Russia has lost over 700,000 personnel, with approximately 500,000 of them wounded. Earlier, NATO Military Committee's chairman, Admiral Rob Bauer, stated that Russian ground forces are now larger than they were during the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, but their quality has since declined. According to him, Russia no longer poses the same level of threat to NATO as it did in February 2022. President Vladimir Putin has issued a decree to increase the size of the Russian army by 180,000 to 1.5 million people starting the 1st of December 2024. According to a source in the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the Russian grouping in Ukraine currently has about 574 to 575,000 personnel. Moscow wanted to increase its number to 690,000 by the end of this year, but primarily due to heavy losses, they failed. Currently, an 11,000-strong group of North Korean soldiers is stationed in the Kursk region. In total, the Russian group in the Kursk region now numbers 59,000.